Welcome in, everybody. Another edition, the College Football Betting Podcast, presented by Betfred Sportsbook. I am your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody enjoyed week 0 in college football. So here's the deal. Did not do a week 0 preview. I feel like everybody's in a rush. Got to get out their best bets. Everybody's got my whole thing is we watch week 0, we enjoy week 0, and then we jump into the betting space in week 1, which is exactly what we're going to do today. And because I love you, how about this? You're going to get not one, but 2 week 1 preview episodes this week on this feed, the College Football Betting Podcast with Aaron Torres feed. Here's the bottom line. Here's what you need to know. Today, this episode drops Tuesday. We are focusing solely on the Thursday night games. Was going to do it all in one episode. And then I said, you know what? Let's focus on the Thursday games on this early week episode. We are only going to preview 3 games. We're going to talk Florida, Utah. We're going to talk Nebraska, Minnesota, and we are going to talk NC State at my UConn Huskies. Then we'll come back with a Thursday episode and the full preview of the weekend, where we'll talk LSU, Florida State, Clemson, Duke, Coach Prime, and Colorado at TCU. We're going to cover all of the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday games on the next episode later this week. But today, again, the focus is on those 3 Thursday night games. Before we get started, a couple of reminders. 1, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. 2, make sure, if you're not subscribed to the college football betting feed here, make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. And oh, by the way, the YouTube channel is starting to really make waves. I appreciate your support. Make sure to find us on YouTube as well at College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. We're going to come back. When we do, we are going to talk all of the week 1 Thursday games. That's when we come back. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, I want to welcome back our presenting sponsor, Betfred Sportsbook and the Betfred Sportsbook app. By now, you know Betfred's story started in 1967 in the UK, over 1,000 shops in the UK, and they have now come to the United States and made a major splash. They are the presenting sponsor of not only all things Aaron Torres Media, but the Colorado Rockies, the Denver Broncos, the Cincinnati Bengals. And what I love about Betfred, nobody takes care of their customers quite like Betfred does. I've been telling you that for a year. We have sent listeners of the Aaron Torres pod to Denver Broncos VIP tailgates. The Betfred suite at Cincinnati Bengals games is rocking. Betfred bettors have thrown out first pitch at the Colorado Rockies games. Nobody takes care of their customers quite like Betfred, and here is what they are doing for you right now. How about this? Bet $50 on any game, get up to $1,111 in free bets. Here's how it works. Download the Betfred Sportsbook app. Bet $50 on anything you want to bet on. You automatically get $111 in free bets. But beyond that, you get up to $200 in insurance for your first 5 weeks as a Betfred customer, totaling $1,111 in free bets. I've told you for a year, nobody takes care of their customers quite like Betfred. They're the only book that I bet with, and I want to thank Betfred for being our presenting sponsor. Hey, hi, back. Gonna be back. Let's not waste any more time. Let's get to it. The Thursday night Week 1 college football games. As I just told you, we are going to do a full episode today focusing solely on those Thursday games. Utah hosting Florida, Minnesota hosting Nebraska, UConn hosting NC State. We will come back with a second episode on this feed on Thursday, previewing the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday night games in college football. That is right, 5 straight days of college football on Labor Day weekend. It is one of the great openings of all of college sports with that, or all of sports really, with that 5-day window to start the season. Let's not waste any more time. Let's jump into it. There is only one ranked team playing on Thursday night. It is the Utah Utes hosting the Florida Gators. Utah, a 6.5-point favorite in the Betfred Sportsbook. The over-under in this game is 45.5. And this is, of course, a rematch of an absolute thriller in week 1 last year in the Swamp. Florida holds on to win. The defense makes a play in the red zone in the final seconds to seal the victory. Anthony Richardson, not only his breakout game on the college level, I would argue that game helped him get drafted number 3 overall to the Indianapolis Colts, showed that full skill set of everything that he could do. Great game for Anthony Richardson. But now this game returns to Salt Lake City, and it is a true home and home. They are playing in Utah's home stadium, Rice-Eccles Stadium, one of the toughest places in college football to play. First note on this game, the most interesting part, this actually opened with Utah as close to a double-digit favorite, 9.5 points in the Betfred Sportsbook. It's down to 6.5, in large part because we don't know the status of Utah starting quarterback Cam Rising. Cam Rising, multi-year starter in the bowl game last year, in the Rose Bowl, lost to Penn State. He was a guy who got hurt, tore his ACL. He's been out all offseason. And as I record late Monday, maybe we get an update Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. If we do, don't yell at me. Don't tell me I don't know what I'm talking about. As I record here, we bluntly don't really know if Cam Rising is playing. The last update we had from Kyle Whittingham came in mid-August. Cam Rising had not been cleared by doctors, and it seems to reason that he might not be available on Thursday night. The point spread reflects it because it went from Utah as a 9.5, 10-point favorite down to 6.5. My question with Utah, though, is this. Even if Cam Rising can't play, does the game plan change all that much? Now Cam Rising is a really good quarterback. Don't get me wrong. I think we have to assume at this point he's either not playing or is going to be very limited. And so the question becomes, does anything really change? And I'm not sure that it does. It starts with the quarterback. Obviously, if it isn't Cam Rising, it appears as though it will be Bryson Barnes. But remember, this is a guy with game experience. He actually started against Washington State last year, led Utah to a win, and then played significant snaps in the bowl game in the loss to Penn State. Now, would you like to have Cam Rising? Of course. Would you like him at 100%? Absolutely. But there are worse backup quarterbacks that you could have. And beyond that, I don't know that it changes that much of what Utah does. Utah, although they have become a more dynamic passing offense with Cam Rising, they are still a ground and pound, beat you up at the line of scrimmage, play great defense kind of team. Well, what has changed with Utah? Nothing in that regard. Second leading rusher Micah Bernard is back. The offensive line, I thought this was interesting. Kyle Whittingham said in the spring that he believes this offensive line has as much depth as they have ever had since he has been there, which is incredible with the way that they have run the ball. This was a team that last year ranked, in the top 20, top 15 nationally in total rushing, 217 yards per game, put up 230 yards on the ground in the swamp. And then defensively, it's much the same. 26th nationally in total defense, but they return a lot of really good players. Thought this was interesting. The All Pac-12 first and second team preseason teams. Utah had 5 defensive players on the first and second teams. As best I could tell, nobody else had more than 2 players on those teams. Utah had 5. So a lot of returning talent there. From the Florida perspective, listen, it's no secret, did not go well in year 1 under Billy Napier. I'm not an anti-Billy Napier guy. I like the way he's recruiting. I think the mess that he had to pick up from Dan Mullen is bigger and more significant than people think. But it was a 6-7 year 1. And I would say beyond that, a lot is now on the shoulders of the new starting quarterback, Graham Mertz. Now, Graham Mertz did not have a great career at Wisconsin. We all know that. Billy Napier said all the right things about, we trust him, and maybe he wasn't used correctly at Wisconsin. Paul Chryst told us that they would do things differently if they had to do it over again. But this is still a guy with 56% completion percentage for his career, double-digit interceptions in each of the last 2 years. Good news for Florida. 2 really good running backs back in Etienne and, of course, Montrell Johnson. But the concern is quarterback, I don't know that I trust. And the offensive line is really young. 4 starters were lost in the offseason, either to graduation or the transfer portal. And then defensively, I don't know that it's going to be much better either. This was a bottom of the SEC defense, 12th nationally, 12th in the SEC out of 14 teams. And I don't know that they got significantly better last year, and they lost their top 4 tacklers off of the team from a season ago. Thought it was interesting, right? When you're Florida, when you have what we believe to be great NIL resources, and I know there's conversation around the Jaden Rashada stuff and how good is it really? You'd think that coming off a disappointing season, they would have killed it in the portal because guys would know that they had plenty of playing time to be had at Florida. Now, they got a piece here or there. They got Graham Mertz. They got the Moton kid, the linebacker from Michigan, and they added another interesting piece or two. But I thought it was interesting for a school like Florida that needs depth, needs bodies, needs to fill holes. Sorry, that would caught me off guard there a little bit. I caught myself off guard. That has holes to fill. Why I bring it up? They didn't really sign a ton of marquee guys. It was interesting. The Athletic put out a preview of the top 100 transfers in college football this year. Florida had 0 guys on that list. 24/7 Sports put out the top 100 transfers. Florida had 2 guys on the list, Moton and Banks, a defensive lineman from Louisville. So it's not like they added a ton of transfer portal talent. And now you're asking them to go to Utah on the road at altitude at a place where Utah, the last 2 years since the post-COVID season of 2020, they are 12-0, and only 1 game has been decided by a touchdown or less. That was last year when Caleb Williams walked in and put up 42 points for USC against the Utes. And so because of it, I'll say this. At 6.5, I actually like Utah. I came in thinking I'm going to bet the under. I think that's the best side, da-da-da-da. But I look at it. Utah's going to be able to run the ball. Utah's going to be able to stop the run and play good defense. They have the better defense, the better run game, the better O-line, and Florida has a turnover-prone quarterback. And so this isn't an anti-Billy Napier thing. By the way, I was dead wrong on this last year. I said, I don't know, Billy Napier week 1. They end up finding a way to win. But I look at this Florida team. I still think they're a year away from being a year away as far as I'm concerned. I just don't know that they have the bodies. Now you got to go to altitude. You got to play a Utah team that basically never loses at home. Give me Utah minus 6.5. That is one of my Betfred best bets. Love that it's under a touchdown. I'm rolling with Utah. Let's keep it going and go to the number 2. I would argue the second most interesting game of the week, of the Thursday night, I should say, in college football. We mentioned that Utah is the only ranked team playing. There's only one matchup of Power 5 versus Power 5 on Thursday night. That is Minnesota hosting Nebraska. Minnesota is a 7.5-point favorite in the Betfred Sportsbook. The over-under in this game, 43.5. Interesting thing about this game, I think you could probably argue that both teams are going through major transitions this offseason. Nebraska, it goes without saying, we know what's new there, right? Scott Frost is out. Mickey Joseph, his replacement, is out. That whole staff is essentially out. In comes Matt Rule. I think Matt Rule has done everything that he can in an offseason. They hit the portal. I think they've really developed some things in the 2024, 2025 recruiting classes, but it's a whole new deal. Jeff Sims is in at quarterback, and a lot of things are going to look different at Nebraska. Probably for the best. From the Minnesota perspective, I'll say this. Yes, PJ Fleck is back. Yes, we read all the weird reports about him this offseason. But the bottom line with PJ Fleck is this. While PJ Fleck is back, there is a lot of new faces at important spots for this team. Tanner Morgan was a 5-year starter at quarterback. With the 6th year of college eligibility last year because of COVID, he comes back. He's finally gone. On top of that, Mo Ibrahim, finally gone. Remember, that was the guy that had a breakout game 2 years ago against Ohio State in the opener, gets hurt, comes back last year. Now he's finally gone after this year. He is in the NFL. Glad to see him recovered. But what'll be interesting to me, starting with Minnesota, do they look and do they play differently? Because last year they had a very distinct, and really most of the PJ Fleck era, they have had a very distinct style of play. They are a team that wants to take the air out of the ball. They want to run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball. And then when they're done with that, run the ball, run the ball, run the ball, and play great defense. That is what they have done for years. This is an interesting stat I always throw out when I talk about Minnesota. Last season, remember, They were third nationally in time of possession. Third nationally in time of possession, okay? The only teams that were ahead of them, Air Force, Navy, triple option, barely ever throw the football. And then the third team in time of possession was Minnesota. It resulted in them having one of the best rush games in college football. It resulted in them having a defense that finished in the top 10 nationally in terms of total defense allowed. Played great defense, fundamental, don't beat themselves. And when you're running the ball as much as they have, you're going to win a lot of games, which is exactly what they did, winning 9 a season ago. What'll be interesting is a couple things. One, do they stick to that theory? If you're an over-under bettor, it'll be especially interesting with the new clock rules. If you watch games on Saturday, they go by faster because the clock no longer stops on first downs except in the final 2 minutes of the first half and the second half. So games go by quicker, and it'll be curious to see if Minnesota is willing to open things up. They do have a new offensive coordinator, and I will say this, new starting quarterback, obviously. They also went into the portal and got some guys that make it seem as though they want to throw the football more than they have. Went out and got Corey Crooms from Western Michigan, 67 catches a year ago, and got Elijah Spencer, 67 catches at Charlotte a year ago. So again, will they go to what they did, what has made them successful, or will they try to open it up more? They said the plan is to open it up more, but we'll see what happens on Thursday night in Minneapolis. From the Nebraska perspective, listen, I said it a minute ago, and I think it's very much true. It's just a whole new deal. I don't think there's much of anything you can take from the Scott Frost era and apply it to this year. And frankly, that's probably for the best considering how the Scott Frost era went and how it ended a season ago. What'll be interesting, couple things from Nebraska's perspective. One, obviously, Jeff Sims at starting quarterback. Really, really, really interesting development there because Nebraska under Matt Rule, just like when he was at Temple, just like when he was at Baylor, he wants a dual threat quarterback, a guy that can beat you with his legs and beat you with his arm. But the one thing I will say, as much as I like Matt Rule and as much as I think he is, frankly, an excellent player, I do think there's a little bit of revisionist history on how good he was at Georgia Tech. These were his stats last season at Georgia Tech, and I know he didn't have a ton of talent around, but 59% completion percentage, 1,100 yards, 5 touchdowns, 3 interceptions. The best year he had was in 2021, 60% completion percentage, 14 touchdowns, 1,400 yards, 12 TDs, 7 interceptions. Now, again, he is a guy that can beat you with his legs, and he is a guy that did have success at times doing that. And so it'll be interesting to see, what that looks like from the Nebraska perspective. What'll be interesting beyond the Jeff Sims, a couple things. One, skill positions are very interesting. I thought this was fascinating. Nebraska put out its depth chart earlier this week. Their leading rusher, Anthony Grant, from a year ago, is third on the depth chart. Marcus Washington, their leading returning receiver, is a backup on the depth chart. So does that mean that they have some new guys in that we don't know about? Or does it mean that maybe some of the old school guys have not bought in to what Matt Rule is doing? Defensively, they do play a 3-3-5. What was fascinating about that, PJ Fleck has talked about it for weeks. Every media availability. We haven't seen anything quite like this. It's so tough. We got to be ready. We got to be this. We got to be that. And to Nebraska's credit, it did not go great last year, but they do return a couple really nice linebackers in terms of guys that can make plays in the backfield. Most notably, Luke Reimer, linebacker there. He is a guy with 86 tackles a year ago, 3.5 TFLs. Beyond him, Garrett Nelson. I'm trying to think here. There's a few guys really that had a ton of success there. The entire secondary is back, including Miles Farmer, who had 73 tackles from a season ago. And so I do think the defense should be good. It should be improved. And I think it could give, I do think it could give Minnesota some problems. By the way, I think I said Garrett Nelson is a returnee. I apologize. He is not. He is in the NFL with the Miami Dolphins right now. Still, most of the secondary is back. Luke Reimer is back at linebacker. And I'll just be blunt. Nick Heinrich is the other guy, by the way, 37 tackles a year ago at linebacker that I was thinking of. In terms of the game, I'll be blunt. There's a side that I really love, and it's not the sexy one. I actually like the under in this game. And here's why. One, Tiger can't change his stripes. Boat can't row in the other direction, right? If you want to use a PJ Fleckism, I know that he wants to open things up more, and maybe he will. And maybe they throw 60 times on Thursday night. But he has had a lot of success doing things one way. And I think especially with the new clock rules, he can keep doing that and win a lot of games. I think especially young quarterback, unique defense that Nebraska is going to run 3-3-5. I don't think he's going to put too much on that kid's plate. And so when I look at this game, Minnesota is already built to win low-scoring game. First-year starter quarterback against a new defense, opening night. I don't think they put too much on his plate, and I think they do what has made them successful the last couple of years. Worth noting, for fun, I looked it up. That 43.5 of Minnesota, how about this? Of their 12 games a year ago, Minnesota, 9 of them went under 43.5 last year. By the way, 8 of 9 Big Ten games went under 43.5. So this is a team that is built to play low-scoring games. I like the under. That is another best bet for me. Finally, big Thursday night game. Would be remiss if I did not mention my UConn Huskies at Rentschler Field, at home, hosting the NC State Wolfpack. UConn, a 14.5-point home underdog, which obviously means NC State is a 14.5-point favorite. The over-under in this game is 46.5. Starting with UConn, listen, bluntly, I'm biased. I get it. What Jim Moore did last year, though, was incredible. Took a team that was 1-11 the year before, finished 6-7, went to a bowl game. And here's the interesting thing. They really turned the season after a loss at NC State. Got beat pretty bad, 41-10. And then from there, went on to win 5 of their next 6 games to get bowl eligible. Included in that stretch, they beat Boston College, an ACC team in the same conference as NC State. They beat Liberty with Hugh Freeze. Never forget that. And so it was an incredible year for Jim Mora and an interesting group that he is bringing back and an interesting name under center at quarterback. Joseph Fangano is the starter at quarterback. For those who don't know, a little bit of a backstory on the UConn quarterback situation. Only place in America you'll hear this kind of breakdown. But UConn, really unique situation. So a year ago, they had a starter named Taquan Roberson, from Penn State, transferred in. Kid won the starting job. Week 0, not even week 1. Week 0 gets hurt. It was unfortunate. He goes out. Zion Turner, a true freshman out of Florida, comes in. And credit to Zion Turner. He actually played pretty well. He did what was asked of him. But, those two guys both come back. But it's Joseph Fangano, a transfer from Maine, who wins the starting job. Now, some of you sit there and say, well, Maine, that can't be good. But the bottom line is, and I think this is what Jim Mora and his staff are thinking. For people who do not know, and I'm sure many of you don't, UConn's offensive coordinator, Nick Charlton, was previously the head coach at the University of Maine, where he worked with Joseph Fangano. And so Fangano's familiar with the system. He knows what the offensive coordinator wants. And I think UConn just feels like he's a veteran guy. We can trust him with the ball. He's not going to do too much. And the one thing that UConn did really well last year was run the football. Victor Rosa, true freshman from Bristol Central High School, same high school as Donovan Clingan, one of the stars of UConn's men's basketball national championship team, had a very productive true freshman year. And then I think it's worth noting, Jalen Mitchell transfers in from Louisville, where he was Louisville's leading rusher 2 seasons ago. So the run game should be good. The defense brings back 8 starters, including Jackson Mitchell, an absolute tackling machine, 4th in the country in tackles last year. This is going to be a really, really, really good UConn team. From the NC State perspective, a lot of questions. Not all bad questions, but a lot of questions. Interesting team last year, went 7-2 to start the season. Devin Leary gets hurt about game 6, game 7. They win another 1 or 2. And then it kind of fell off. They go 1-4 down the stretch without Devin Leary. Devin Leary's obviously now at Kentucky, and they replaced Devin Leary with Brennan Armstrong. Very interesting story here. Brennan Armstrong, 2 years ago at Virginia, was one of the leading passers in college football. 4,400 yards, 30-plus touchdowns. He was awesome 2 years ago at Virginia. Bronco Mendenhall retires. His offensive coordinator leaves, and it crashes and burns in year 1 under Tony Elliott. Well, guess what happens? That same offensive coordinator from 2 years ago, he's now at NC State, where he brought Brennan Armstrong with him. NC State last year, deep receiving core, 14 different players scored 1 touchdown or more receiving. That was the most in college football. And speaking of the most in college football, the defense is very interesting as well. Very good run defense. Peyton Wilson, another tackling machine. Guy had about 100-plus tackles a few years ago, gets hurt. Last year, he's kind of not really playing at 100%. He is back for a 5th year to lead this defense. But this defense, 19 interceptions a season ago. That was 4th most in college football. I'll be quick on this one. I'm not going to waste too much more of your time. This just feels like a stay away to me. And it's not because whatever. First of all, let me say this. I can see the scenario where UConn covers. I believe that the people in the UConn football building believe that they are going to win. Why I'm going to stay away is for a couple of reasons. The main reason, I don't know what I'm getting from either quarterback, right? Like if you want to bet this game because you like UConn or you like NC State or you think UConn sucks or you think NC State sucks, that's fine. I would lean UConn plus the points because what I will say is Rentschler Field should be rocking on Thursday night. They're expecting a crowd of 30+ thousand at that stadium. That stadium, people don't remember, UConn hasn't been good. It can get really, really, really loud. There's actually a quote from Robert Griffin III, RG3, that's kind of made its rounds over the last month in the lead up to this game, where he said that the loudest stadium he ever played in was actually at UConn when he was at Baylor. So that shows you how loud that place can be. I think it's going to be a great college football environment. But why I can't bet it, I don't know what I'm going to get from either quarterback. What are you going to get from Joseph Fangano from UConn? Are you going to get 2021 Brennan Armstrong? Because if you do, NC State's going to put up a lot of points. If you don't, it could be a very close game. I lean UConn plus 14.5, but otherwise a stay away to me. The only other game that has a spread in the Betfred Sportsbook, Kent State is at Central Florida, UCF. It'll be UCF's first game as a member of the Big 12. Yeah. If you feel good about betting either side of a 37-point spread, then you go crazy. But for me, it's a stay away. My 2 official best bets, I do like Utah minus 6.5 against Florida at home on Thursday. And I do like, oh, by the way, Minnesota, Nebraska under 43.5 as well. Lean UConn plus 14.5 at home. All right, I think that's it for this episode of College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. How about that? You're going to get 2 for the price of 1 today. And the price is free, by the way. Best things in life are free. How about this pot? If you're not subscribed, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify. Also, please go to the YouTube channel. Subscribe. College Football Betting with Aaron Torres. Would appreciate your subscription there as we help grow that channel. That's it for today's show. Good news is you're not done with me. First of all, we're going to have full episodes of the Aaron Torres pod. Just dropped my college football playoff picks on the Aaron Torres pod feed. But we'll be back on this feed on Thursday, where I will give you my best bets and picks and preview of the Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday games that include LSU, Florida State, Clemson, Duke, TCU, Colorado, South Carolina, North. We got a lot of good games coming up this weekend. Cannot wait to talk to you guys and girls then. Have a great day. We will talk on